You're listening to Thrive, where every week we have meaningful conversations with incredible women like you, packed with practical tips and sisterly advice to bring you from a life of simply surviving to thriving. We're shaking the story that you're just getting by and stepping into who God made you to be. Because it's not enough to simply survive, you deserve to thrive. I'm your host, Erica Gwynn, and I'm ready to thrive together. Here's today's episode. If you're in a season where you just feel stuck, we've got good news for you today. Your purpose doesn't pause. Even when it feels like nothing is happening, God is working and your story isn't done. Author and my new friend, Hope Reagan Harris, is on Thrive today, sharing her own story of finding and living her purpose through multiple career and family moves, even in those moments of thinking, what are you up to, God? You'll finish this episode feeling more confident, discerning if it's a God shut door or a devil laid obstacle, and less forgotten through the harder moments where you may just feel stuck in the mud. If you just can't figure out why the heck you are where you are now, take a breath. There may be reason to your season, and Hope is here to help you figure it out, or at least find peace in the process. Stay tuned through this conversation. Drop it 5 stars if you like what you're listening to. And now, welcome, Hope.
Hello, Erica. Hey, guys.
Yay. I just get so happy and excited talking to you because you are so on fire for God also, and we love to see it. And your fire and joy are just so contagious. But also, I mean, I don't even know how much time has passed now, but we just hit record and start talking like we've been friends for years. So I'm here for this conversation. I think this is going to be a great time.
I know. I think I'm going to get your cell phone at the end of this. We need to be texting.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, before we fly through everything already, we need to take it a step back and tell everybody else who is Hope, because you are so on fire. You're doing things, girl. And everybody needs to know who you are.
Yes. Okay. So I am Will's wife. I'm Remy Claire's mama. She's 8 months old. We were just talking about our girls. And I also work full time for YouVersion, the Bible app. I used to work in the corporate world, but this is a new transition over the last 3 months. I'm an author, and at the end of the day, I really just have a heart for encouraging women and helping them get unstuck so that they can show up and live out their purpose that doesn't pause.
I love this. What I love about this so much too is we're already similar in so many ways, but also in a way that I feel needs to be said because it's important. We are girls living with purpose and living on purpose.
Yes.
Who also know what it feels like to be stuck. And that's, 100%. I think, it's a very big misconception, I feel like, where people think, okay, you see girls who feel like they've got that it factor, they're so confident, or they're doing the dang thing, and you're like, wow, they must have just had it easy, or they figured it out, or they're just kind of doing it. And we miss the fact that for so many of us, probably way more than we would initially think or realize, we know what it feels like to be stuck and maybe struggle with that routinely or regularly, where you have these moments or these seasons where you're just like, oh God, help. I'm in the mud. What do I do? And I think also though, as believers, we can say that sometimes the enemy tries to get us in exactly that place of confusion and doubt and worry and feeling stuck in the mud so that we stop moving forward with confidence.
100%.
Yeah, because he's got some tactics. He's got some game. It's terrible. But anywho, as we know from the title of your book, which just came out into the world and is so cool, purpose doesn't pause. So talk to us about this. What does that mean? And where did that come from? And your heart for bringing that message into the world that purpose does not pause.
100%. So it's kind of crazy when that phrase came to my head. I'll never forget. It was a night before I was going to have to say no to this ministry opportunity. I was super bummed. And from the outside looking in, everyone was like, why are you not going to do this? It was going to be working for someone that's just amazing. And God was just not making all the logistics pan out. And so for some reason, this thought came and it was purpose doesn't pause. And I remember I doodled it, posted about it, and it went kind of viral. It was kind of whoa, people get this. Well, long story short, I didn't know what my next book was going to be about. And so I started writing a book on waiting, which I guess it was funny because I was in the middle of a waiting season. I didn't have an agent representing me. And like, I was guessing people's LinkedIn, like emails from going to their LinkedIn. And like, I was getting told, no, 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 no. And so anyways, in the middle, like you're saying, I get stuck often, and I was actually even stuck today. And I think sometimes in those moments of feeling stuck, you just have to keep refining or letting the Lord refine and pivot. And so long story short, one of my good friends introduced me to her friend who was becoming an agent, and we worked on refining the message. At first, it was just going to be about purpose. And then I started thinking, what causes me to question my purpose? And I was like, feeling stuck and confused, because I was smack dab in the middle of feeling stuck and confused. And I really had this pivotal moment when I was on a Peloton, which is random, unconventional, but God can use the unconventional to do unconventional things. And so I was just in one of these seasons where my corporate job had been really my worth, who I was, where I found a lot of my purpose. I was climbing the corporate ladder. And one day I was just feeling so stuck that, I couldn't even muster up the energy to work out, which, as you guys know, listening, when you're overwhelmed and feeling stuck, it's like going to the coffee shop you don't even enjoy anymore, or chatting with your friend. You literally just can't even do anything. And so I was on this Peloton bike, not moving my legs. My husband Will walks in and he was like, Hope, what are you doing? You've got to move your legs. Cause like the class, Kendall Toole was just like talking, and I'm just sitting there staring at her blankly. And he left the room, kind of cracked up. Obviously, in the moment, did not tell him he was right. And I suddenly realized, Erica, like the way that I'm sitting on this freaking bike is the way that I'm living my life. And so then that's when I kind of had this aha moment. And I remember telling my agent, like, this moment, and she was like, Hope, that's it. That is how you open this book. That's how you start talking about feeling stuck and confused. And long story short, I talked to so many different girls, and everyone was like, I feel stuck and confused. And so I wrote the book where you don't have to finish, like read from start to finish. You can literally pick one chapter with the topic that's causing you to feel stuck and confused, like waiting, comparison, others' opinions, not feeling worthy, something good coming to an end, dreams not looking like you pictured. Read that one chapter and then read a story from another girl who's been there with us, and put the book down and trust that the rest is there for you later. So I really wrote it from the perspective of, I know how it feels to feel stuck and confused, and I want this to be as easy and fun to read as you possibly can find during this season, because it is, it is hard to find that when you feel stuck and confused. So that's a little bit about my heart behind it, Erica.
I love that you mentioned too, though, that sometimes we can put our worth into our work, or like, especially,
Yep.
I feel like a lot of us, especially if you're listening to a podcast, you're probably like, podcast girlies are a different breed. We're ambitious. Like,
Yep.
you've got goals, we're going places, you're in that personal development groove. Like, you care about that. And sometimes I think that God gives us the loudest pauses in our paths because we need a reminder that it is all on him and for him, and not all on us or for us. And that sometimes, at least for me, like, I know if it were up to us, we would go pedal to the metal, full speed
Yes.
ahead, and we might not rest to like stop or recalibrate or like check our GPS, metaphorically speaking, to be like, okay,
Yeah.
is this still right or not? Like, without even knowing it or consciously realizing it,
Yeah.
we can end up heading in the wrong direction because we didn't stop to pause, because we were like, I've got it. I've got the idea. This is gold. I'm going with it all the way to the end. And
Yeah.
so it's like, or we could do what we just said, where we're like, you can start to kind of place your identity in a job title or in a relationship or in some sort of like earthly accolade that isn't necessarily in alignment with our real purpose in Christ, or just like whatever our purpose on earth to better the kingdom is. So I always think of that too, because every time I'm in like a similar situation of feeling stuck, I'm like, okay, like, if our speed is going to be different
Yes.
than what God's speed for us is, but he's probably just up there like laughing at us, like, oh honey, like,
I know.
take a breath, take a
Yeah.
breather, slow down a notch. Like, this isn't a stop for good, but like, you need that. You need the co-driver here,
Yeah.
not
No,
like not just us.
I'm cracking up because I literally had one of these moments this morning. So I will say being stuck is not necessarily a bad thing, y'all. Like, it is
Yeah.
not necessarily bad. So right now I'm in this season, which I was telling you a little bit before we hopped on here, but there's this purpose doesn't pause movement happening. And so long story short, I thought I wrote this book for sorority girls, and God has just shown me that there is so much, like it is for a sorority girl, but it is for all women who feel stuck and confused. And so right now I'm actually fundraising to give out these books for free to women who have been in sex trafficking, women who are incarcerated in prisons right now, moms, it just, in corporate women, like all these nonprofits just keep coming out of the woodwork saying, Hope, we want this book. And so I actually had this moment this morning where I called my friend Sarah. She's helping me with all my social media. And I was like, I am just feeling so restless, so anxious. I'm noticing that some of my friends are like, that I thought were my friends locally here are unfollowing me on Instagram. And it's just like, I feel like Satan, the enemy, is just trying to really make me feel stuck here. And she was like, Hope, no, no amount of rest can stop the plans and purpose that he has for your life. Just take a breather here. Like there's clearly something more going on behind the scenes. And no joke, Erica, the reason I was a little late to our podcast was because I was on the phone with this lady who's the founder of this organization who has over 4,000 women in both prisons and moms across nationwide that need this book. And had I, just kept going, I would have never even had the time to sit down and understand this. And so I now am trying to rest, allow God to keep working. But it's like you're saying, I think at times we just get so focused on the goal that we forget that there's a bigger picture and that God has unexpected things that he's working on behind the scenes that we wouldn't even imagine, like if we don't slow down, we sometimes, we may shortcut it and not find out what he's doing.
Okay, well, here's a question for you. So you mentioned, okay, you're seeing the enemy's taking a toll here too, where he's like throwing crap at you, your friends are leaving, whatever. There's I think times where a pause may be a God-given pause where God is like, hey sis, slow down, like we got to recalibrate here. And then I think there's also the flip side of it where maybe the enemy is trying to throw a pause in God's plan. Like maybe God would be saying, Hope, keep going. You're doing the work, you're doing it. And the devil's going to start throwing things going, I'm going to stop you right there, sis. Like no more. So at least for you, how do you kind of work through discerning between the two? Discerning if it is a pause that God has there for you because there's something else that you need to learn. There's something else that you're maybe missing from whatever, or if it's something that the enemy is trying to thwart God's plan in your life and you have to kind of push past it a little more aggressively, going like, not today, Satan.
No, that's a really good question. So I'm going to give you two examples. The first one, my corporate career, which I talk about all throughout the book. And so literally door after door just kept getting slammed. I mean, I would take a new role. The same stuff would be happening, but it got worse. And then I would apply for another role, get told no. And it was just over and over again. The Lord, I felt like, was making it so clear, like, this is a dead end, Hope. You have finished your assignment strong here. It doesn't mean that you weren't always supposed to be there. I truly believe when I started my corporate career, that is where the Lord had me. There were plans, there was purpose, but there was door after door at the end where it was like, okay, I finished my assignment and I can like lay my head down at night knowing I did the work there. I did what he called me to do there, and he's calling me somewhere else. And that's, where really I made this pivot to YouVersion. So then let me talk a little bit about YouVersion. Long story short, it was light and it was easy. I did not have to push down doors. Yes, were there doors that popped up that needed to be slammed down? 100%. But the Lord went before me. And so I'll walk you through that. There was one day where I called my husband, Will, and I'm like, Will, I was on maternity leave. Remy was 6 weeks old. I had just been diagnosed with postpartum depression. I found out that week that I didn't get the promotion that was going to get me out of this really toxic situation at work. And a peer of mine who actually had texted me and asking for interview advice later told me that, she got the job over me, which was just, at the time, it felt like backstab. It felt just like my life, my world was ending. Like, I'm on maternity leave. I have no way to fight for the career that I had given 5 years of my life to at this one company. And so anyways, that was heartbreaking. But I remember calling my husband, Will, and I'm like, look, the Lord's telling me it's time to step away from this role. So when I'm at 2 weeks, I'm, 2 weeks of my maternity leave, I'm going to put in my notice. And we were both kind of freaking out, like, okay, well, what are we going to do? But he was like, hope the Lord will provide. And so I started praying to God. I'm like, you placed me here. You put all these circumstances in my life, just like he did for you, Erica, and the listener today. Like, he put you here. And I'm like, Lord, send someone to find me, just like you sent Samuel to find David. Like, I'm out here tending my sheep. I'm doing what you call me to do. I'm trying to steward everything you've given me, all these hats that feel crazy right now, but send someone to find me. No joke. Check my email. Someone from YouVersion that I had connected with 3 years prior reached out and was coming to Rogers, Arkansas, where I live. So first of all, it was like, okay, literally, if you're specific in your prayer, sometimes the Lord is very specific in how he responds. And so we met up, and, the conversation started with, we don't do remotes. Like, you cannot work remote. So that was a door that popped up in the middle of the interview process. And literally, YouVersion was like, you know what? We're going to let the Lord work out this detail. That door was slammed, or like not slammed shut. It was knocked open. And so the difference in these two things, like you're saying, is one feels really hard and heavy. And it's like, the more you go, the harder the brick wall that you hit. And it's like, okay, this is clearly the assignment's over. It's not a dead end. The assignment's over and he's leading you somewhere else. But then there's the flip side where you're going to experience hurdles. Like, we're in this earth and that's just what's going to happen. But when the Lord comes and you still have momentum pushing you forward, even when it doesn't make sense, and he works out the details, when you give him your yes, that's when you can know, like, I might be stuck, but he is still working. Like, let's just keep, you can rest in the pauses, like you're saying. Just like right now, I have a huge need of people who want these books. I don't have the donations, and that feels stressful, and I feel stuck, and I want to spin my wheels, but he has to touch hearts to donate. He has to do his work, and I can pause knowing I'm doing what he's asking me as the time pops up, but I'm going to wait for him kind of for the next step. So I hope that answers, but I think it's the flip is either it's hard and heavy and you're hitting a brick wall, or it's still hard, but for some reason, these things that people say are impossible are working out, and the Lord is making it light and easy, even though, you're experiencing hurdles and experiencing things that the world would say would stop you.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so speaking of like corporate life and all that jazz, in the book you talk about a job at a tech company, I think it was, right? That
Yes.
turned out to be like basically not what you signed
Yeah.
up for. So you
Yeah.
thought you'd be like managing and serving these executives, and it turns out to basically be
Yeah.
like a glorified call center position.
Yes.
But this is what I thought was like really the kicker. So like not only that, but in doing the call run through test with your boss, you were one of 75-ish to
Yes.
fail the test. So
Yes.
I'm sure I don't need to ask like how you felt, because I'm guessing, not good, especially since you were already feeling frustrated and a bit bamboozled that like this
Yeah.
job position in the first place, you're
Yeah.
like, this is not what I signed up
Yeah.
for. But I think what you did not mention in the chapter that I want to know now is like, what did you do with that after? And what do you think God was doing with you through that? Because
Oh
the
my
fact
gosh.
that like,
Yeah.
because right off the bat, you're like, first off, didn't sign up for this. So like, hello, I've been tricked. And then on
Yeah.
top of that, now you're like feeling humiliated in the process, and you're like, I don't even want to be here. Why am I the only person failing here? Like,
I know.
I didn't even sign up for this.
No, I'm actually cracking up because me and my good friend that she got this job too, we met obviously in DC, and we were literally just rolling the other day on the phone cracking up about this. So this was one of those moments where I literally I just gotten married. Will and I literally the night before had traveled all the way, like over a few days, from Arkansas to Washington, D.C., slept on an air mattress. Will was unloading our pod while I was at work because he started a week later, and he was literally moving everything for up to the 7th floor of our high-rise apartment. And I'll never forget. I'm like, I can't quit. Like, this is not an internship. I am married. I am supposed to be adulting. This is my first job. What is going on? And so I failed because I was I was not confident, right? I did not know why I was in this job, what was going on. I was really doubting my purpose in this role. And everyone, when they made you do the call, Erica, they made you do it out in the open where everyone was listening. So you take this call, and then there's one of your bosses is on the phone. Everyone's listening to you, and it was just super embarrassing. Like, Oh my gosh. It's like you couldn't even think about the call because everyone's watching. You're just like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm in like this glass box and just, or a fish tank, and everyone's just watching me. Um, so anyways, I felt that. And I remember going home that week and telling my husband, like, I failed. Like, I don't know what, like, I can't lose my job. And so I feel like the Lord in that moment taught me just the importance of working hard and trying to show up, even though you have no understanding of why he's placed you there. So I instead had to, once again, I felt stuck and I had to pivot here. I was like, okay, this game plan's not working. Just winging it is not going to work here. I'm going to have to figure this out. And so I started identifying tactics for how I was going to climb. Well, there was a dashboard. So you could literally see how everyone was doing all day long. So you could see how many calls they had made, how many emails they had made, how many voicemails, and then those were the inputs and then the output of it. So like how many executives signed up for your event. So I mean, not only is it a fish tank when I failed the thing, everyone at any given point can refresh and see how you're performing. So I went, no joke, and this is not like a brag on me. This is like hard work, whatever, and doing things that not everyone's willing to do, right? I would start coming in at 6 a.m. because executives would answer the phone early in the morning. And then I would send them an email. And I figured out a way, and my friend actually started doing this too. We came in together. That's why we were cracking up. And so I just felt like the Lord, anyways, I ended up being at the top of I went from failing to being the top of my class to getting the first promotion out of it. But I feel like the Lord was just showing me, if you really steward what's in front of you and show up for what's in front of you, you don't have to be insane like me and show up at 6 a.m. But if you just put in the work, like I see that, and I don't find it a coincidence either that God, gave Jesus the job of being a carpenter. Like that is hard work. And sometimes he does call us to that in that season. And so, yeah, I ended up finding what he was doing there. I ended up finding purpose in it. But I felt like he was just teaching me, keep pushing forward. You're going to have resistance in life. And it's not the end of the world when you face it. But it was really hard to face that in my first job.
It too, because you figured it out. Like
Yeah.
it also really just strips our pride away. And I feel like
It
sometimes we just
did.
need that. Sometimes we just need someone to like
Yeah.
laugh in our face and be like, you suck.
Yeah. And
And
now,
then
I mean,
like,
it's
and then you can kind of
hilarious.
take it and be like, you know what? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not good at everything. I do need to work at some things. Like, and then you kind of have the decision of, all right, is this something that I should put in the time and the effort and
Yeah.
get better at it? Or is this something where I'm just like, you know what, this is not my calling and this is somebody else's. So I will just kindly step away and not force it.
Yeah, 100%. But in that moment, I'm like, okay, this is my job. I am married. We have an apartment that's 500 square feet and it's $2,200 a month. Like, I
Yup.
have no out. I've just got to figure this out, and God has a plan. But this feels terrible every day. Every
Oh,
time I
for
put that
sure.
headset on, I'm like, why?
Did you take the headset as a souvenir when you left the company?
I should have, but I did not. I think at
This
that
is what I
point
went
I was
through.
like, good riddance, get me out of here.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I think for me at least, I think one of the
Yeah.
most important lessons that I have learned in my life so far is that
Uh-huh.
God wastes nothing. Like
Yes.
truly, he doesn't waste the wait. I know you talk about this a lot in your book, and neither should we, which I mean is way easier said than done sometimes. So what at least helps you the most when you are kind of in those moments in the waiting room and you're looking for God to call your name and you're sitting there and you're like, all right, I know I'm waiting right now and I see this thing on the other side. I have faith that I'll get there, but or maybe you don't know if you'll get there. Like there's heavy stuff in our life today where so many women are going through, and you look at it and you're like, all right, I'm waiting, but like don't really know if it's going to happen or not, and struggling.
Yeah, that's
What do you
really
think kind
good.
of helps you the most when you are like in that waiting period and you're not trying to waste it, but it is hard?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. The 3 years that I felt stuck and confused at the end of my corporate career was so hard. And I felt like one thing that kept me going was knowing, one, that God was preparing me. If he hadn't called me and promoted me to what was next yet, he was preparing me in that assignment. And I really, Erica, I know this sounds crazy, but I tried to just start like viewing it as an assignment. Like, this is a test. I am learning. I'm going to be like a sponge. And as sucky as this is, I'm going to try to soak up all of the hard that comes about. And so I think when you start viewing it as, okay, this is prep work, I think like a lesson that I think about. So one time I trained, quote unquote, for this half marathon, and I didn't train. I say quote because I didn't do it. And I literally, Erica, my body, I was studying abroad in Switzerland. My body saw the finish line. I saw a video. My mom was like, never show me this video again. And I saw my body saw the finish line and I passed out and I woke up like unconscious, didn't even know what had happened. But it was almost like I shortcutted the training. I didn't show up. I took shortcuts and I was not able to finish the race. And I don't want to be in heaven one day and be like, I did not finish my race because I was so focused on wanting to be comfortable that I took a shortcut through the process. And I'll never forget, either in high school, I played soccer and we would be running the laps around the soccer field to condition our bodies for, these long soccer games. And one of my friends, she was really, really talented. And she would always shortcut where she would just basically be one lap less than she was supposed to be at the ends. And she was so talented and her talent would carry her a certain weight, but had she actually conditioned, she would have been like phenomenal, but she didn't put in the work. And so her talent can only take her so far. And I think that's true today. Like, we have these gifts and these skills that God's given us, but if we don't do the prep work, that can only carry us so far. And so I even see in, my job today, I look back at my corporate career of being in finance, leading teams that created purchase orders, rolling out software globally. If I had not had each of those, what seemed, random in that career, when I had stepped into YouVersion, I wouldn't have been ready, because I am now literally using something from each of those roles to do what I'm doing today. And I think even when you can't see it, just remember that what seems random is really God's intentionality. And so I really focus on, one, the prep work. Don't take shortcuts, because you just are going to shortcut yourself from the goodness that God has for you. And two, just, if you just focus on the random is intentionality, you can really lean into it a little bit differently. Like, okay, I don't know what this is for, but I'm going to lean in because I know God would not ever put me somewhere that doesn't have a purpose.
Yes. And what's so good about that too is I feel like that also applies to those really, really hard, difficult moments where we're just like, why, God?
Yes.
Like, why me?
You have no answer.
Why this thing?
Right. Oh my gosh,
Like,
yes.
Because that's one of those things where then you're just kind of like, well, why not me? Because obviously we live in a broken world. So not everything that happens to us or is necessarily for us from God. Like, he's not like, ooh, you get cancer for, like, something's just, it's a broken world. So bad things are going to happen.
Yeah.
But then it's also one of those things that when we're thinking, okay, why me? Why this? Whatever. It's like, if you can look at it like what you just said, where this is going to prepare you for something in the future, or even like what you just said, that if it's not necessarily preparing you for something immediate that it might be preparing you for something down the road, or you'll use something from it and you don't necessarily know, because it's not on us to know that. It's God's intentionality at work. It's his reason for things. And if we believe the truth that's in Romans 8:28, that it all works together for good, it's not, I always try to like comfort myself in those hard moments where I'm like, sometimes it's not all about us. Like, sometimes it's not even necessarily for your immediate good, where you're going to see, okay, you went through this hard thing, so now here's this blessing. It's not like it's this 1-to-1 ratio. It's like, sometimes you might go through this hard thing because a couple years from now, you're going to help the next girl go through that same hard thing. And it's like, that might be the good that comes from it.
Yeah.
Because now you're able to link arms with her and help her on her road that you had a hard time getting through the first go around. Does that make sense?
No, that's so good.
I always look at that and I'm just like, wow, God, like, that's cool.
Yeah, no, and I do find this so fascinating too, because the other day I was thinking, sometimes God, he always provides for what you need, but sometimes he provides with another person. And
Yeah.
I found that so true in this journey now, where my friend Sarah, I could go on and on about her, but she was starting this business and just reached out and was like, Hope, God has given me this gift of social media. I want to come alongside you and help you for free. Anyways, that's a whole nother story. But I think when you say something good, coming to an end, or something bad happening. I think about, I lost a little brother when I was younger, and I talk about that in the book. And I don't understand why we had to lose him and why he didn't have, a very long earthly life. I don't understand that. But today I'm able to relate and understand when someone's going through a loss, and I wouldn't have that. And so that's the good I have to glean from the situation. And I also have the hope, right, that I'm going to see him when I step into heaven someday. And so I think things are not going to be perfect here, and bad things are going to happen, but God will always, to your point with Romans 8:28, use it for his good and his glory, even when it's the most horrible situation you can ever imagine or fathom.
Yeah. Do you believe everything happens for a reason?
I do. I really do. I think that God always has a plan. I think that, before we were even born, he knew everything that was going to happen every single day of our lives. And even the bad stuff that's happening, he knew. And since he's already won, like all of the bad, he can use for his good. And I've seen over and over again, like just other bad things that have happened in my life, like experiencing, like eating disorder, like being able to, relate to people and work through that. The loss of my brother, like I just talked about, even having like postpartum depression right now, I'm able to relate. And everything, I feel like, I think about the verse where Paul's talking about in our weakness, like that's when he's strong, and that's when we're strong because we partner with him. And I've just seen over and over and over again in, my ministry, which is the same as your ministry, just doing everyday life. When you boast about the weakness, it just points all the glory and the goodness to God. And that may seem crazy, but I have just seen so much good come from the bad in my life when I give him the glory and try to glean his goodness from it.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I've always thought that. And I think I've been challenged. Like I've always thought everything happens for a reason. And I've been
Yeah.
challenged on it as an adult when we do see so much bad stuff happen, and we see so much brokenness in the world, or we see so many bad things be experienced, and we're like, wait, but there can't possibly be a reason for this. And then sometimes I think like, well, some things, if they're really bad on this side of heaven, there might not be a reason, because like we said, God's not sitting there like with a magic wand going, you get a really bad hand of cards and you get a good hand of cards. Like that's just not how it works. But I think it's up to us to figure out if we want to use the mess that is around us and turn it into a message,
Oh,
and turn
that's
it
so
and like
good.
let God's message come
Yeah.
through us with that. Because it's like we still have free will and we still have choices, where it's like when we've been through shit, for lack of a better word,
Yeah. Yeah,
we kind
exactly.
of
There's no other word
like,
for it.
right, like sometimes that just is what it is, and it's kind of on us if we want to pick up the shovel and
Yeah.
get it and move it somewhere. Or
No,
like
that's so
if
good.
we want somebody else to, if we want to say, hey, can you help me, can you grab a shovel too, and like help me see through this and like
Yeah.
figure this all out, like it's I feel sensitive around it, because I don't want it to at all feel insensitive to people who are going through something in that position where they're like, wait,
No, no,
I
yeah.
can't see, there's no reason for this, there's no purpose for this. I just want it to be encouraging that like, even if you can't see it, feel it, and it's like the worst possible thing you have personally been through up to this point in your life, don't write it off as being for nothing, and don't
I
write it
like
off
that.
as
Yeah.
not having fruit or not having potential, because the lowest point might just be the point where you've hit rock bottom. Now God's going to plant a seed somewhere, and then it might take a couple of years, but you will see something grow from it if you allow it to grow.
Yeah, that is so good. And I mean, I'm sitting here on the other side of a 3-year journey explaining like what you're saying. It's like, oh my gosh, my career was making me feel so stuck and confused. And I'm like, why? Like this is what I've poured all my energy into. I've done everything. Like I've put in all the work. Why? And I'm sitting here on the other side knowing that, when you lean on him, he does show up in his timing, and it's not always with the timeline that we want or we expected. And yeah, had I already had YouVersion worked out before maternity leave, that would have been amazing, because I would not have been stressing on maternity leave. But he is so good, and he has something for you. Like, Erica's saying, don't write it off. He has something for you that is going to blow your mind. And his ways are higher than our ways. We don't always understand them. Do I understand every crappy thing that's happened in my life? No, but I do know that he is using it for his good and his glory. And he wants to do the same for you. And there's not a single need that he does not provide for. And if it's not happening today, maybe you really don't need it today. And that is a hard thing to have to sit in sometimes, but he's really taught me that he will give you everything you need and exactly when you need it, because you're his child and he loves you and cares for you so much that he sent his son to die for you so he could spend life with you forever. And that life starts now.
Yeah. I think it also always just kind of helps me to remember that a truth is that God is good, and his goodness is not conditional or dependent on any sort of earthly blessing that we are
Yeah.
seeing being thrown out to us or anybody else. Because I think it's so easy to, like, we get on social media and we see people who are, they just bought their gorgeous mansion, or like they just
Yeah.
had their fifth baby and whatever, and everything is, oh, God is so good, like God has blessed me, whatever. And we can almost, it's like you see that, and you're sitting there waiting for what you think are your dreams to come true, and you're like, wait, but God, like, can I have a blessing too? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Like,
and
you see me
like
over here in Arkansas.
right, and it's like, or you're on the flip side, you're hurting, and like you're going through really hard stuff, and it can be so confusing because you're like, wait, what is this goodness, like what does this look like, and what is this going to look like in my life? And we just have to have that reminder of like, God in his character and in his nature is a good God. So even if you are in your worst position, feeling really bad, you can have assurance and confidence in the fact that God is not bad. Like that is not in his character. So something good will come. And yeah, that's just kind of like, I just always go
No,
back to
that's
that.
so
Anytime
good.
I'm in like a really rough spot where I'm just like, you know what? It's just, he is goodness. So it's like, it's not going to come in the form of, earthly anything. It's going to come in something that is good for me at its core. Or like, I don't if that makes
No,
sense. It's
that
like it's
makes
not
so much
necessarily, it's
sense.
not just gonna feel good. Like it's going
Yeah.
to be good. And there's a distinct difference between the two that the line gets blurred a lot.
Yeah. No, it
But
does. No, I 100% agree. And I think too, and maybe even like for me, stepping into this new job, I gave up a significant pay cut. Like that didn't necessarily feel good. I was really scared. I mean, it was over 6 figures that I gave up. And I was like, man, is this the right thing? And, now I've stepped in on the other side and there's this joy in this fullness that I can't even explain to you, Erica. And I have less, but because of him, I feel like I have so much more, if that makes sense. And it's just, the way his kingdom works is upside down from what the world works. And it's so hard sometimes in those moments to think, okay, like from a worldly perspective, taking that pay cut seemed insane. Like people are like, Hope, you're crazy. You've worked for this title. You've worked for this salary. What are you doing? And, stepping into it, being a little bit scared, he has shown me like, I have so much more because I'm so much more filled up. And he provides in ways that, like you're saying, you can't explain. And yeah, I'm with you. But it's hard from being in the world, having one lens, but having to kind of flip your view and step into things and just trust and kind of take that leap of faith. That doesn't always feel great, but he always is there to catch us, even, in the craziest situations.
yeah, yeah. Practically speaking, if a
Yes.
girlfriend listening now is sitting there and she's like, cool, Hope and Erica, like I hear you, I get it, I'm with you, but I still feel stuck right now. I don't really know how to get unstuck. I'm not comfortable, and I'm like not really sure how I vibe with all of this. What would be kind of like your step one, step two, step three for her today that can kind of help her wiggle in the mud a little bit?
Yeah, I know this is good. I would say the one thing that helped me in this moment when I felt this way and I just didn't know what to do, I didn't think there was an end. I was not buying my mentor saying you're not stuck. I was like, whatever, like I am stuck. I want to quit this job. I wish I didn't have bills to pay. I want to give this up. Or when I found I had postpartum depression, I'm like, really, God, like this is what, I'm at a recovery that I wasn't cleared for anything for 16 weeks. I was just like, really, like I have this baby, but this is how I'm going to be, seriously. I think the one thing that really helps me is I write down a very raw prayer of everything I'm feeling. Like, God, I am frustrated. Like, I feel like you have, shortcutted me. I feel like you've not given me, I'm like what I need. I'm questioning your goodness. Like I will literally be so open because he already knows that, trust me. Like he already knows that you have those feelings. And then I just hand it to him. I'm like, I'm giving this to you. Like, this is where I'm at. I know you'll meet me where I am. And so that's really step one. Like I would just get really honest with God. And I always just write it down because for me, like tangibly, practically writing something helps me mentally. Like I just love it. I mean, I am a writer, but yes, I love it. And I think there's a lot of like scientific pieces that support writing and journaling. Then the second thing that I do is I read the word. Like, and there's days that that's hard, but I found when I was in the middle of this, being reminded of God's goodness and what he says, like we're not going to understand everything in life, but he did give us his word and he is very crystal clear on our purpose and how he views us and our identity that's found in him. And so when I feel this way, I go back and read about like what he says about me as his child, like what is my identity? And I try to anchor to that as much as possible. And then the third thing is I just try to show up where I'm at, like it is an assignment. Like I'm in a test, I'm getting, my number 2 pencil, I've got my Scantron and I'm showing up. I don't know why. I didn't necessarily ask to be quizzed on this, nor does it really feel comfortable, but I have found that the hard things are worth it and there's something worthwhile, and almost the harder that you feel attacked, like the greater the purpose, y'all. Like the enemy knows what he is up against. He knows the plans and purpose for your life and he's going to try to stop them. And, I look back and there were so many times I wanted to give up on this book. Like I didn't want to keep writing, but I wrote it because of you. And I wrote it because I knew that this message needed to get out, and that one of the greatest schemes is feeling stuck and confused, because that stops us from showing up. And so I'm now seeing on the other side of this, the one little target audience that I had, the Lord is expanding to prisoners, to women that are sex trafficking. And I just know that the assignment that you're wanting to throw in the towel on right now, the same is true for you. That he promises abundantly more, and his ways are so much higher. And on the other side of this, because I couldn't see it, y'all, when I was writing this book, like I literally at one point wanted to be like, I'm going to give the publisher back the money. I'm done. I've got a full-time job. Why am I even doing this? But I didn't, obviously, but I would just say, keep pressing in, and just every day, even if you have to just show up and be like, okay, Lord, I'm showing up again. Like, what are you doing? Help me lean into this. That's actually fine. Like, that's actually fine. If you're to that point of exhaustion where you have to pray a frustrating prayer, read one verse, and then show up on assignment, I think you'll start to notice a little bit of your heart posture will pivot, even though your circumstances may not change. And I'm not going to promise that they're going to change, because mine didn't for 3 years.
Isn't there a saying on this too? I'm going to probably butcher it, but I've heard it so many times and I love it so much, where it's like, if your circumstances aren't changing, God is using your circumstances to change you.
Yes.
I think that might actually be it. I think I should
push it.
Yeah. But yeah, that's like how the saying goes, where it's like, if something's going to be moving, if it's not the thing you think or expect or want to be moving, it's probably you that's supposed to be doing the moving, or your heart, or your mindset about it. And that's how God works.
Yeah. And it's hard to be pruned, like there was a lot of pride in me with the salary I was making and the title that I had. There was a ego behind all of that too. And I feel like it was hard to get that stripped away of like, Hope, you're not going to be announced in heaven with your title at this corporate job. You're going to be announced in heaven as my good and faithful servant. Like, let's get this straight here. And there was a lot of tears, depression, loneliness. And I mean, it still continues. He's still working on me, and there's still things that are hard. And we're never going to be brought to completion until we're in heaven. So there's always work to be done. And I just hope wherever you are today that you feel near to God, that he loves you, that he created you, and there's a purpose as long as you have breath in your lungs here on this earth. So keep leaning into the assignment. I know it's hard. I know it's heavy, but he sees you, he hears you, and he is working even though you don't see it.
Well, on that note, I'm going to get things wrapped up with something we ask everybody. I'm really stoked to hear what you're going to say to this, is what does thrive mean to you? And how do you strive to thrive in your everyday life?
Oh my gosh, I love that. So I think thriving to me is feeling like you found your sweet spot with what you're supposed to be doing in the season. And so I guess the way I try to strive to thrive is honestly, when things feel hard and heavy, like we've talked about, trying to go to God and be like, okay, I'm missing something. Like, how am I supposed to pivot here and kind of recalibrate, like we've been talking about, to step in to this differently. And so I think striving to thrive is a continuous search and seeking of him and asking him, like, okay, God, this isn't working. There's still momentum here. And as long as there's momentum, you're behind this. So how do I need to pivot? And I see this even today with pivoting my way with this purpose isn't pause movement, right? It's like still going, there's still momentum, but seeking him so that I can step into it and thrive with the authority and the power that he's given me, that also raised his son from the dead, just with the same power that's in you.
I love that. Tell everybody where they can find you online to connect with you more and to, of course, grab a copy of Purpose Doesn't Pause.
Yes. Okay. So you can find me on TikTok and on Instagram at Hope Reagan Harris. Reagan is Reagan. And then you can snag Purpose Doesn't Pause pretty much anywhere books are sold. But I think Amazon's kind of a sweet spot there.
Wait, before you go, make sure you're subscribed to never miss an episode of Thrive. Drop 5 stars on your way out if you like what you just listened to, and come join the party on Instagram at thrive.podcast to stay inspired and thriving all week long. Thanks for tuning in. It's your time to thrive.